4, body talk. So we're talking today boobs, Botox, Catholic skirts, everything body shame around our bodies and being brought up in the Christian church. And I feel like this has come up a lot in our local news, and by local news I mean like hyper local.
Yeah, when you said local news, I thought that you meant like the Baltimore Banner, like big news stations.
No, like the only news I'm interested in are hyper local news. There's just been a lot of talk.
Our 7-person chat.
Yes, there has been a lot of talk about getting Botox, especially one of our friends whose sister is a dentist, just started doing Botox out of her practice, which I guess is the thing to do. So now we've all been talking, should we have a Botox party? Should Kay get Botox? So I feel like this has been the big question for you lately. I mean, not the big question. There's like real shit happening in the world, but also, should we get Botox?
So when I was asked to attend a Botox party, like, I think it was even just 2 years ago, I was like, I don't even get my eyebrows waxed. Like, I need to start at the very, very basics before I consider getting an injection. And then over the last year, I started getting those 2 big forehead wrinkles, and I felt like I'm in my mid-30s. Like, I'm not supposed to have these yet. And then what's actually kind of even more interesting is that I created this narrative in my mind that everybody else was already getting Botox, and I was going to be old and wrinkly in comparison to all of my friends who were obviously getting Botox because it was just like the total commonplace thing to do. And I started like just looking at everybody's foreheads. Is your forehead moving? Is your forehead not moving? I don't know. I had a forehead obsession.
This is one of my core tenets of my beliefs is sometimes, you know, I don't really yearn for the olden days for a lot of reasons, but there is one thing that I'm like, back in the days of yore, it used to be either you were born hot and then you were just like the village hot girl and like all of the local farmers wanted to marry you and that was your thing, or you were just like not hot and then you could just go on with your life and like be known for something else or, you know, be a swamp witch, but there was no pressure. Now I feel like there are so many ways that you can change things about yourself that you can't just like live into your swamp witch destiny. If you were not born the village hot girl, like you have to choose, do I want to like make myself into that anyway, in like so many ways too. And it's not just like, oh, am I going to be a Kardashian or just, you know, completely do nothing. It's just this whole series of decisions, and we live in a world where we already have decision fatigue. So then it's just like adding all these decisions on top of it, and you're like, but does any of this matter? But yeah, like you're saying, I don't want to ever trivialize this of like anything that you or I chose not to do. I
chose to do it as
yeah. And like anything that like, even if you or I didn't choose to do it, I feel like we're all, you know, making these choices. So anybody who chose to do something or didn't choose to do something, that can... Yeah, like I don't have any judgment around that because none of us in this conversation have just like never modified our bodies in any way. So it seems really hard to draw the line about where to be judgmental about others.
Well, and that was the big talk between my husband and me because it was one of the few times that we were in heavy disagreement about something that involved me. And it was this issue of whether or not to Botox because he's like, to me, you'd be so insecure if you wanted to do that. And that is not you. You are a confident woman. You're beautiful. You don't need that. You should age naturally. Your mom doesn't get it. She looks beautiful. Why do you want to do that? And I tried to quiz him with that a little bit. Like, okay, if I should change nothing about me and be totally natural, should I also stop shaving my armpits? Should I also stop shaving my legs? Like, I'm with you on this. Like, no mascara, none of that. He's like, well, that's not the same. And, you know, I agree. Injecting something into your face to freeze muscles is the extreme of that. But it did just start different things. Like, okay, where do we draw the line? And my friend used to have a joke that was like, does she pass the Mousy Bob contest? But I don't want to say that in any way that puts down Mousy Bobs. But it was that if a person had kind of a very plain colored hair and it was in a bob, would she still be beautiful? And if she didn't pass that, then she's like, well, then she's not really, you know, that pretty. And I'm not saying that I fully agree with that at all. But this kind of concept of there's so many things we can do to change our looks and create that picture that we are the hot girl that's in magazines and all that. That I don't know. Again, where do you stop? I get highlights. I didn't get highlights for 10 years, and then I saw one light gray hair, and I was like, yep, it turns out that I'm the type of person who's not okay with that, and now I'm going to go do it. And I think people are beautiful when they keep their grays. It just wasn't me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why I am glad that I've mostly kept my mouth shut about seeing somebody else who is a few years older than me, get like a few years ago, obviously now is the age when a lot of our friends are getting Botox, but seeing somebody who is being confronted with those decisions of like, do I start dyeing my hair? Do I get Botox? I'm glad that I kept my mouth shut because I think there were some things at the time that I'm like, I would never do that. Like, I'm just going to age naturally in the body that God gave me. And then you can't say that. I think it's a lot like parenting. It's like before you have kids and you're like, why don't those people keep their kids in line? You can't say that till you have had the experience and seen like, maybe you are the parent who has to leash your kid because it's a choice between that and like letting your kid run out in the road. So
and I made my Botox decision. I went with a plastic surgeon and one that was known for taking an extremely conservative approach. So if those of you have gotten it, she used 20 units, which is on like the extreme low end. So it made me feel like if it fades out and I don't like it anymore, then I don't have to do it again. Then it's gone. And if it turns out that, hey, it actually did make a difference and I wasn't sitting there letting my 2 little wrinkles driving me nuts, then it's just something I like to do the same way as all the other things.
Yeah.
So going into just like the expectations put on us in general and starting from a very, very long time ago, so like what, as maybe not a child, but even like as you went into adolescence, what expectations were put on us for looks and for how we're dressing ourselves and what we're doing for our appearance.
Yeah. I mean, I think for girls, it does start pretty young. And I'm sensitive to this now, having a daughter and hearing some of the things people say about like, on the internet. I don't know that I'm like super close to anybody who's all about, sexualizing what little girls wear. But my daughter is 7 and I just saw a video on the internet of this guy, talking about how he would like never let his daughter wear a crop top, blah, blah, blah. And my daughter loves wearing like crop tops. She just got a 2-piece swimsuit and not in any kind of sexual way. She just really likes belly buttons. I don't know. She's just like very fascinated with like having her belly button out. And that's fun for me. But I definitely remember at her age that I was at least not in a context where people were pushing back against people who are like, oh, that little girl shouldn't wear that. You can't like show off that part of your body because you're responsible for controlling men's gazes. And that would like putting the responsibility of the male gaze on girls to make sure that they don't attract wandering eyes, instead of teaching our boys, keep your hands to yourself. That starts at a very young age.
And also, this kind of brings it back to plastic surgery. But what was interesting with how I grew up is that I had massive boobs. Like I think it was like quadruple D, sometimes like a G. And I ended up getting a reduction. But with that, and the expectations with how I was supposed to dress growing up, it was like nothing could overly show boobs. Showing cleavage was very much linked with trashiness in the way that, not that my mom was a very kind woman, she would never say trashy, but she would say, ooh, please cover up, this is showing a little bit too much, we need to find a different dress. It just created all sorts of issues where it was like to just dress how other girls were dressing with my body was impossible.
Or
with
how
the
you're
standards
comfortable,
put on me.
just things that are cute, that are comfortable, that you enjoy wearing. That responsibility is put back on you.
If you can picture like the Abercrombie and Fitch tank tops that they all had the built-in bra, that built-in bra would cut off like a fourth of the way into my boobs, and it would just create like 2 different boobs, and then I would have to wear a shirt over it. Like the best fashion trend that ever happened during high school for me was wearing a long sleeve shirt and then a tank top over it. That was briefly cool. That was like a blessing for me and how I was expected to dress in my household and all that. So
yeah, I went to 3 different high schools, so it was really a cultural buffet of the U.S., but I graduated from in the Bible Belt in Texas with a lot of conservative Christian, evangelical Christian influence around there, but I definitely remember a lot of issues with the dress code at my school. And I think that I was just coming from Pittsburgh, and just a very, I don't know, anybody wore anything that they wanted to school. I don't think that there was a lot of policing around girls' bodies and what they wore. And so moving from there to Texas, and it just didn't occur to me things of like wearing a sleeveless shirt. And I don't mean like a spaghetti strap shirt. Not that
oh my gosh, never.
Not that that's slutty. I mean, I think it's like funny that it's like, oh, God forbid she was wearing, but I would wear like skirts. I was just like in a phase where I liked to wear high heels a lot, and there were a lot of comments from my peers as well as the teachers. But I remember going on a trip with the theater kids and getting pulled aside. And we were driving through like West Texas out I don't know, we were driving out to Lubbock or something. So it was freaking hot on the bus, and I was wearing this sleeveless shirt like outside of school grounds, and got pulled aside by my director, who was this older Texas woman, and she gave me a little talk, and I think she meant it in this very like, I'm gonna help mentor you a little bit, you know, of like teach you things.
That
that
makes
she's
it
like
even worse.
yeah, like she just meant so well, but she was so bothered by that, and that she was just so worried about how my shoulders, like the most sexual part of the body is the shoulders. I don't know if you know that they were like attracting boys and distracting them from, she's like, well, this is just makes it hard for the boys because it distracts them from what they need to be able to do. And also I was like, lady, this is theater. These boys are all gay. They might not know it yet, but they are all gay. I think like one of them turned out to be straight, but yeah, but again, it
was not talk on the bus. None of the guys on the bus were like, man, check out SJ's.
Yeah.
Guns.
Look at the shoulders on that. Yeah, I'm like,
so
it's not
strong
even.
for the rowing.
Like, yeah, it's not even, I don't know. Yeah, the shoulders. It's just, but I remember getting talked to in class a few times again for wearing sleeveless shirts, and they're like, oh, you know, somebody's sitting behind you and he's trying to work on his test. And I'm like, if this is keeping this young man from being able to complete his English essay, that a girl in front of him, you can see her shoulders, where has his upbringing gone wrong?
I have a distinct memory that I was reaching up in my locker to put books away, and I had to roll my Catholic skirt. It wasn't even long. I just had to roll it because the waist was too big otherwise. Mm-hmm. And a teacher came up behind me and squeezed my stomach, like right above it, and it was like my bare skin. I mean, it was a female teacher, but she's like, why can I see this? Why do we have a rolled skirt? And then I ended up getting a Judgement Under God, a jug, which...
That's a thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
they're
no.
real. Yeah. Yeah, I had to go and like lick envelopes in the alumni office for an hour after school.
Do you feel like that was a sufficient lesson to teach you not to be slutty?
I don't even know what I could do with that skirt. I think that afterwards I had to start like using safety pins
to keep the waist in.
I mean, it wasn't like, the rule was how many inches above the knee, and it was the right level above the knee. I just had to roll it, and rolling was against the rules.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It's so interesting to me that in the U.S. anyway, and I think there's a particularly puritanical strain of Christianity in the U.S., and so it feels very different sometimes when you go to other parts of the world. I mean, their Christianity, their religion has its own baggage, but particularly here around sexual shame and the body being impure is a challenging one for me. And you just see so much of that roots of so many of the groups that came here came from those more kind of puritanical, like the earlier Europeans that came here and brought Christianity, brought that with them, because I think if you look at the earliest Christianity, it's such an embodied religion. Like, there's so much about it being part of the body, so it's not just like you see it in a lot of religions, and there was like a discussion, debate in early Christianity between the Gnostics, who later kind of got kicked out of the mainstream because they had this idea of the duality between the physical and the spiritual, and like felt like they were separate. And that is where kind of like Christian doctrine came out with this, like Jesus being truly God and truly human. Or they talk about like the resurrection of the body, that it's not just like this spiritual rebirth, but they talk about like bodily rebirth. And I think there's so much that's like important and embodied about Christianity, that of all of the places for us to have the locus of this very like, your body is shameful, like you just kind of want to, you know, like not think about it too much, not explore it, not touch it, not revel in it, is like very counter to kind of especially what the early church was about. But I mean, even beyond that, that they would debate about what the role of the body was, and what if our bodies are us, or if we're inhabiting our bodies, and continued to kind of come down.
You are the image of the Most High God.
Yes, exactly. That it is like, you are, and that like Jesus like came in the flesh to be among. So I just find that so interesting, that I know that we've come down on this side, but I think a lot of it comes down to like patriarchy, because there is such a difference between how men's and women's bodies are perceived and what we do in them. I mean, that a lot of it is about like control of women's bodies.
The boys were definitely getting yelled at right along with us. We just didn't know about it. You know, like, your pants are so tight. How are the girls supposed to concentrate when they can look at your tush and all that? They were probably getting it. It's too embarrassed to share it. We can see your bulge.
Really concerned that this was happening, and I'm like, what a unique place. There's just like lots of men wearing leggings, like frolicking around, and the ladies are like fainting because the men are wearing like Shakespearean leggings and with just like the little cod piece, and you're like, I cannot study with your cod piece right in front of my face.
I didn't even think of it being leggings. I was thinking of like the khakis that all the kids at my high school had to wear. Just a little too tight. And then there's also just the whole piece for, I just want to make sure that I called out that, you know, the men obviously have some piece in bearing the shame of their clothing too, which is not a thing. Yeah. But I will get to them next. In also just what we feel about and what we're told growing up about like the size of our bodies and the shapes and what they're supposed to be. I know that, you know, I went on Atkins when I was like in eighth grade as a family thing. And again, super supportive, sweet family. Mm-hmm. I think that was really somewhat the norm around that. Not Atkins per se, but the idea of like diet culture and making sure that everybody's watching their calories and all that. And having that happen when you're a girl in high school and that's how it times out, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, I definitely learned about diet culture from my mom from the very beginning, and that was always kind of a concern. And something I talk to friends a lot about now is taking eating and exercising away from this diet culture and obsession with thinness, and just like exercising because you enjoy it, because it makes your body feel good. And I just remember so much of it growing up that exercise was a punishment for eating things that you shouldn't have eaten, and food is this just like moment on the lips, forever on the hips kind of mentality, or like, does that taste as good as skinny feels kind of thing. I don't know, my mom didn't say those things exactly, but especially not to us. Like, I think that she was trying to shield us, but she was saying those things to herself and was consuming media that was saying those things to her. And so yeah, it's like you pick up on it, and it really made me hyper aware of how I talk to my kids about that. Not just not commenting about their bodies, but also not commenting about my body, or, you know, how I look, like, oh, this makes me look fat, in saying something like that in front of my kids. But I also guess, like, you know, like, people are like, oh, I do this, I try to do this for my kids. Like, you should do that for yourself too, of like, well, this makes me look fat or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't say that to yourself. Who cares?
You look awesome. No, the turn towards seeing exercise is something that makes me feel great, feel energetic, feel strong, versus using it as a way, you know, very focused on calories. How many calories am I burning? Am I in a caloric deficit? has been so amazing. It's been such an awesome way to kind of re-enter the working out world and all that, compared to how it was during high school and college, where it was very much so running to stay skinny, wanting to stay, within a certain size range, all that.
Yeah. My mom did Weight Watchers a lot, so that was usually the ones. And just thinking of food and this kind of scoring system. And it was... I mean, not that it took all the joy out, because it wasn't around all the time. My dad was a big Atkins diet, yo-yo diet kind of person, of either being full-blown Atkins or not on anything, and then just binging on food basically, because the diets were so restrictive. I think that was... I saw a lot of the 80s, 90s diet culture. But it was interesting kind of seeing the difference between parents, or just seeing how that kind of appears different in genders, because with the skinny culture, I think there's so much pressure on women to be small, and not just skinny, but also just to take up as little space as possible. And then for men, not to be fat, but to take up and certainly not, especially now, I think you see the toxic effect of patriarchy on men, is that it can be just as toxic, and it's not usually to be skinny, but all this thing, about being very muscular, about having a high muscle mass, all that stuff is also, you see some really destructive things for men's bodies, but
and
it affects them in a different way.
Every single smut book, literally every single romance novel, the guy's always some tall, lumbering tree. So many times I've literally seen the word tree described as these huge men who are 6'5" plus, and also super muscular, and it doesn't matter what else about the guy is described. If they're a nerdy CEO of a finance company and they rock climb, they're somehow still 6'7", packed with muscle and all that. So I will fully give it to the guys that they're under.
Yeah, we had
pressure.
more feminist smut writing now. Where is our smut shout outs to the short kings and the medium kings? Come on.
Emily Henry, shout out to Emily Henry.
Oh,
She's one of the few authors who I've seen the guy character be the same height as the girl character, and described as not having huge or muscular arms, just nice arms. And I'm oh, you mean a normal human guy, the one that most of us are going to encounter and fall in love with, and all those things? We're not going to find these oak trees.
People who are hyping up the kinds of things that regular people get attracted to in relationship. Not that I'm not that I'm oh yeah, tall guys gross, but I don't.
Tall guys can be great. So can
I'm
the normal height guy.
I'm the same height as my partner, and I actually feel I really like that. It just feel I don't want that feeling of I can be this little delicate flower that he can scoop up and throw over his shoulder. I like the sense of kind of. I think he's probably stronger than me, but well, I don't know. We haven't battled it out, and we haven't bench pressed each other yet. But I don't know. I think that why is there not more smut for the women who get off on the sense of equal power dynamics? That's sexy for me.
And I know that we've talked about this before, so I hope it's okay to bring it up in the middle of an episode when you as a listener might not have been expecting it, but we have talked about these ridiculous expectations about guys' penis size, and I almost texted you last night, but I knew that you were out, and so I didn't want to scar you with what I was about to share. But I was reading an extremely popular romance novel. It had hundreds of thousands of reads, New York Times bestseller, so this is a really popular one. And the guy's penis was described as, when she was going down on him, she had both fists stacked and him fully in her throat, going as deep as she could go, and there were still about 3 inches in between where her hands were and where her mouth was. And I was what is this?
We don't want this. Yeah. Dear author, we don't want this. I am shuddering a little. For the standard size vagina is not designed to... and there are, there's probably...
I just imagine if you were a 19-year-old, maybe I don't know what the percentage of virgins among 19-year-olds, but like if you're a slightly younger woman and you're reading this book the same way as we used to read Cosmo, and they're like, oh, that's what I'm looking for in a guy. I gotta basically have,
and then
like,
she
a
goes
log
and like
there.
experiences this, and she's like, one hand, two hand. Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm there.
What is wrong with this guy?
Is this a micro penis? It's like,
how small are her hands? Like, it's just like building up these ridiculous expectations on either side, because it's like, is she a baby? Like, why are her hands so small? Why can't she fit more dick in her mouth?
It's like we're supposed to be these like small, tiny, skinny things, and then guys are supposed to be these like huge, lumbering things. And just both of us, when you look at the surgery, and it's obviously more popular among men, but to literally lengthen your legs and kind of add inches on is like extremely expensive, and you go through like years of therapy. And painful.
But it is a thing, like talking to a friend who's single, and she's on the taller side, and is just like, I mean, there's so many fish in the sea that she's basically like, this is a quick way for me to, she's like, I'm not interested in a guy who's shorter than me.
She's on the taller side. That, to me, is like, I'm 5'2". I don't need some like 6'5" guy.
Yeah. But it is like, she is like, I'm one of those people who's just like, my search criteria is like, I'm not going to look at anybody shorter than 6 foot. She's like, 6 foot means, 5'10", and I'm 5'8", and she's like, I don't want anybody shorter than that.
Her. I think that she's fair.
I mean,
to
I'm not, especially because it's like, how else you got, you come in and you start swiping. There's so many people. You have to have just some preliminary search criteria. Otherwise, you're going to get, total exhaustion flipping through. So I don't blame her. I don't blame any individual. And at the same time, I think there is sometimes some of this, like, it's hurting men and women. And I think some of the stuff of the ways that it hurts men is really evident right now in our culture, whereas like it's been evident for women for a long time. So I don't know, maybe it's just interesting to talk about, because the thing of like, oh yeah, diet culture is really harmful to women. Like, we're all trying to waste away so that we can be little skinny waifs.
Guys are over there with their penis enlargers.
Yeah, and like doing like fractures in their legs to try to stretch them out. Like that's
Ron DeSantis is wearing high heels. We have to look out for these people.
Men will do anything before go to therapy. Ron DeSantis, looking at you.
I will say that things seem to be shifting, and I'm curious about how this will play out over the next generations for both women and men. And I think that we see this in even, like, when I see younger high school women dressed, I see a lot more girls who, have some extra weight on them. It looks adorable. And they're much more likely to be okay showing their stomachs, showing ripped jeans, wearing things.
I love this.
Yes.
I'm just so happy for them. Yes, thank you for bringing this up. And
they look great.
Yeah, they look great. And we had a block party the other day. We live in a pretty young neighborhood, so a lot of our neighbors are Gen Z. And yeah, like my neighbors were just wearing like cropped, any type of body that they had. They were wearing, crop tops, short shorts. And they looked cute. They looked happy. They looked like they were wearing what they wanted to wear. And it did feel like we were coming around, because it felt like so the opposite of, I remember growing up and my mom had like a lot of those fashion rules. It makes me think of, what not to wear. And my mom was very what not to wear. I mean, and like from a whole like social context of what not to wear. Because my grandma would be like, oh, no white after Labor Day, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of this, like, no mini skirts after 40, no bikini bathing suit after you've had kids. And there were just all these unspoken, but maybe your mom would tell them to you, rules about who had bodies that were allowed to wear different things. And it's like, it still affects women well into adulthood I was talking to her the other day, and she said, this was kind of like a thing for her, that she got a dress. And she's like, but don't worry, the skirt's not too short, because like I would never do that to anybody. And I'm like, do that to other people. But yeah, she was like,
it would be like, oh my gosh, yeah.
She has legs that are bigger than some other people's legs. Like, the horror, shield your eyes. But to be, a fully grown woman and still feel like there are these rules that are governing like how long your skirt has to be to cover your legs. I'm just so happy when it like took me a long time to unlearn that and be like, oh, I can wear this thing even if I don't have, whatever perfect body type to show it off. I'm like, these girls are like 23 and they've already figured that shit out. Like, good for them.
That's, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, we have kind of a constant, which is that I'm from a big family, and so I have a sister who's 18 years old. And it's been interesting because she's worn things that I wasn't able to leave the house in, or and when I look at my mom and I'm like, you're letting her wear that? She's like, she looks great and she feels great and she takes pictures and she's confident in them. And so it's like even her perspective has changed over time, maybe just looking at everybody else, but I think it's awesome, especially as long as they feel good wearing it and all that. And I think for guys as well, when I look at, you know, Timothy Chalamet, I think that's how you pronounce it. Is that it?
Uh-huh.
He's not who would be a big hot star, you know, 10 or 15 years ago.
I do not think that, he is like this hulking tree guy that like the smut writers are writing about.
Yeah, nobody's reading about a slim person with a very, you know, his jawline is kind of more feminine. Like his features are very delicate.
Delicate. He's a delicate little prince.
And girls love him. You know, posters of him, everything. My sister totally screams for him. Not screams, but, you know, is very excited about the idea of him. And I just kind of hope that continues playing out. Not him in particular. Timothy, you're wonderful. I think you have a great personality. You're probably not my type. But just in general, just guys that are, there's not just one way. And it's not just like this huge, muscular tree of a man with his, you know, dick that could impel you just out to get you. It's, it's Timothy. Who knows what your size is? I'm not going to comment on that at all. I didn't even mean to bring it up. But
I mean,
yeah,
we wondered.
But still, more slender.
Zendaya, if you want to report back, let us know.
Oh my gosh, you're so behind in your gossip. That is a different person. She is not with Timothy.
I know, but I don't know who he's with now. So I'm assuming she's still
Kardashian.
knows. Oh, why is everybody with a Kardashian? That's true. I didn't know. I knew they weren't together, but I didn't know who he was with now. So forgot to Google. You didn't warn me to Google Timothy Chalamet before this episode.
It wasn't on the outline. So now that we've talked about this kind of really nice rise in body positivity, I want to talk about this conflict that's there between owning your body, being really happy about it, being happy about how you look, where you are, and the kind of natural desire that all of us feel towards self-improvement. And that looks like a lot of different things. It can look like getting our hair done. It can look like getting, you know, your eyelashes done, your eyebrows. In my case, getting Botox, those 20 units. Like, how do we kind of balance those two things? Working out, you know, everything really that we do just to feel good in our skin.
Yeah, you know, that is one that I think I always feel really challenged about. One of the first things that makes me think about it is like the money or the time, you know, because the value of the time that you spend on it. And I think sometimes where I get kind of tripped up is like, oh, well, you know, if I spent that time doing something I don't know. Also, I think you get a little bit steeped in this working in the nonprofit sector or, you know, like other kind of, you know, human focused sectors like the one you work in, where it's kind of like, well, you know, if you didn't spend an hour a week getting your nails done, like imagine what you could do with that time. And if you didn't spend a couple $100 getting this, you could, I mean, yeah, there's like
all 350 for Botox.
Yeah, there's all these things happening. And so like my first reaction that is just from this like starving nonprofit, barely eking along kind of mentality is like, why would you spend money on this when there are, you know, so many important social causes that you could support? But then it feels so hypocritical to just be so black and white about it like that, because we're all spending, I mean, I'm not living like a monk, you know, just like eating some canned beans and then like living in a little hovel and then giving all of the money back to the poor. Like, I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm spending money on things for myself. So like, while that's sometimes my instinct when I look at paying for some of these things, I'm also like, I mean, I spend money on myself. Why not something that, makes you money? And it is not more stuff, like adding to like piles of stuff that we don't need.
You know, that's funny because I actually thought that you were going to take that in a different direction, and it was where my mind was at.
Am I going?
It was at that sometimes I feel like, okay, if I'm going to take the time to get my nails done, or if I'm going to get the time to get my eyebrows done, what's going to make me feel good and what's going to like look good when I go and talk to people that I'm going to be feeling. And it's things like running and working out regularly and all that, because to me that just has made the biggest difference in terms of, even though like my body measurements have probably not actually changed, but in terms of how I feel, walking around, going to the pool and all that, I feel strong, I feel energetic. But again, just the same as you said, that doesn't mean I still don't have time to do things for myself that are otherwise, and including getting my hair done, getting my highlights done. A funny thing is that actually my husband cut my hair for about 5 years after 2020. Yeah, and we started cutting our own hair in 2020, and then we just kept on going with it. He really got into a rhythm, very nice straight hand. And then finally one of my friends who is a hairstylist, we work out with her, was like, can you just please come in? Like, I would really, really appreciate it if you stopped having your husband cut your hair.
And I feel like now you have like banked all of that goodwill of like all that money that you didn't spend for those years on your haircuts and all that time that you didn't spend, that now you can have that as extra. So if you're feeling like, do I deserve this? Can I spend the time on this? You can like pull a little bit out of your reserve of all that money and time that you saved. It's funny because my husband was the same. He made me do his haircuts for years. Not that I was like that excited about doing it, but I think he was going to Supercuts and getting the like $15 haircut, and they would do a terrible job. So I was like, well, I could do that. Like, YouTube video, pair of clippers. It didn't look great, but if you're just doing like a half inch all around or whatever. And I think that was a real feat that I finally convinced him, like, you're an adult with a job. You can spend money, and go to a real barber that's going to give you a haircut that makes you look like a grown-ass adult. And that was a really big thing. He actually started going with his friends first. And they would all go to the one downtown where, they have like the bar there and stuff.
That's really lovely.
And I was so happy for him. I was like, you are finally discovering the thing that women have known for the longest time, which is that it can also be like your relaxation time, your social time with your friends, like women all going to the, to the nail salon together or something, that he started doing this with his friends. And I'm just happy for men whenever they discover these, again, like kind of letting you get past like patriarchy, being like, real men get haircuts by themselves and like don't socialize and talk to their friends, to get past that, being like
good together.
Getting your haircut with your friends is a super fun thing to do. So I just cheer for men every time.
Maybe he should invite my partner, who just shaves his head bald every few months and then lets it grow out and then shaves it bald again, because it's always extremely alarming when he shaves it bald.
I would love for him to be your husband's style mentor, because I feel like I want him to pass on all of the great wisdom that I have given to him. It's, there's like the time and the money thing, but then again, there is also just the like, the feminist thing too of, I think sometimes there are like anti-feminist or non-feminist people on the Christian side who still kind of do the whole like, but this is the body that God gave you, so why are you modifying it? But that feels very much like the Botox argument that you were having with your husband. That's like, well, these things are fine, because usually those women are still like doing their nails, highlighting their hair, but like the Lord hath drawn the line when it comes to boob jobs or whatever, So like that one particularly feels hypocritical. But then on the flip side, I think sometimes there will be like feminist arguments, and those I can kind of like, I agree with the thought behind them more, but it's like, why are we shaving our legs? Like, we're just doing it for the patriarchy because, men and razor companies have told us that we have to have these hairless dolphin bodies. But at the same time, then I'm just like, I did try not shaving it for a while and being like, I'm not doing this for any man. And then I was like, I just honestly don't like body hair on anyone.
It for you. I didn't feel like anybody was telling me I had forehead wrinkles, but they were the two little, they call it the 11s. I learned that term after I got them because they were staring at me and they were bothering me so much every single Zoom call I was on. And, I did it for me. I did it because it was primarily bothering me. I also have short eyelashes, but for whatever reason, I have no interest in getting the eyelash extensions that are also popular. And other people get them and they like them, and it's what they notice and it's what they do to feel better. So it's just interesting. We kind of all have our own little suite of things that we do to feel good in our own skin.
I guess it is, it's coming. I think that's a good way to like have it kind of come down to of like knowing that you're doing it for yourself. And it's hard to recognize what that is, because I feel like a lot of the things that I'm doing for myself, on some level, that what I want for myself is probably informed by pop culture, you know, magazines I read growing up, what I think that like other people that I'm close to think of as beauty. But then sometimes I'm so exhausted analyzing that. And like around the Botox conversation or, you know, things like that. Like, you know, sometimes I'm just like, let's just do it. If you feel like doing, you know, I'm like I'm a chronic overthinker. So then I'm finding myself doing all this overthinking, and sometimes I'm just like, let's just do it.
Well, what's funny is at first I thought, okay, if I get Botox, like I kind of want to keep it a secret. I'm kind of going to be embarrassed. I don't think I'm going to tell anybody. But then instead, I was so curious about it, and I felt very like, okay, this is why I'm feeling it. It's nothing shameful about it. And so, as you know, I started asking as many people as possible, like, what do you think about Botox? I'm kind of interested in getting it. Do you have any opinions? And that's where I learned that in my head, every single person had gotten Botox and it was totally a standard thing. And that was actually just a narrative that I had created. And actually, people were like, I have wrinkles right here. They kind of bother me, but for now I'm holding off, and it's just nothing you have an urge to do.
Yeah.
Not anti, not pro, just
and like, then there are people that you're like, oh, she has beautiful skin, she must Botox. It was so interesting hearing you asking people about this, because then some people that you're like, oh, she has flawless skin, it's like, nope, she was just, you know, have genetics or like really good skincare routine or whatever.
Really great about wearing sunscreen.
And then, you know, I think it just kind of like surprises you. So as with other things, just destigmatizing it and talking about it makes it so interesting and helps us to make decisions that are right for us, I think. That was like really helpful hearing you talk to people about that.
And it being a more open conversation made it that I could learn things like, okay, here's what you should know. You know, 20 to 50 units is going to make a big difference. If it's your first time and you're not sure about it, then you want to go to this person, because otherwise somebody, you know, if you do go to somebody who's more like they just have access to it and they're a friend, then maybe they're going to give you double the amount than you actually want right now. And that's going to look yuck.
Well, I was going to say, like you were saying that, you know, everybody has kind of like their own threshold about what they look in the mirror and like bothers them. But mine bening not from, you were like Irish ancestry or something, mine being from like, sort of like Mediterranean looking with like the light skin and the dark hair is body hair. And I feel like that has been like such a pervasive thing. And again, like, it's just like, you don't want to talk about it either. So you're like doing all these things. And I was definitely like doing things to deal with it from a pretty young age, because my mom like never did anything about it or said anything.
I will literally never forget this kid telling me that I had a happy trail when I was in like 8th grade.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember like one girl in my school, like the guys called her gorilla arms because she had like visible arm hair. And I think that that's one that girls get teased about. So I'm sensitive about that for my daughter because she is my coloring too. So like, when you have that light skin and dark hair, it is apparent that you have body hair even before you go through puberty. So I feel like I was just like trying all of these things, but the same thing as like, you know, when girls are like going out and like trying to figure out like birth control or tampons or whatever with no direction from a trusted adult, like I was just out there. I mean, it was a wild time of experimentation for all of us. I feel like we were all figuring out makeup on our own too, and now they have like YouTube videos. So just really happy for today's youth. But I was kind of, you know, like trying different things to deal with that, and like trying to figure out my thick eyebrows in an era when thick eyebrows were not a thing. That's just like, that's been my own personal one. And then
how much
like
to get waxed in the down there area.
Yeah, and like it's painful. Like do the things like laser hair removal that are more expensive but will last for longer, but that is still painful. I don't know. Yeah, it's just like a constant series of decisions. So having had some laser hair removal, I'm pretty glad that I did it again, because it just takes the overthinking out of it, because then like you do it and it's taken care of, and I'm not constantly facing a series of decisions that it's like, do I get it waxed? You know, do I get my eyebrows waxed again? Do I, you know, do it this way or that way? It's kind of nice for some of the things to just have it taken off of the table. Although I even having found like the level and type of hair removal that is fine for me, then it is like having a daughter. And I remember a member of our family, like married into our family, was saying of like some of the young girls in our family, she's like, oh man, like that girl's gonna have to start shaving her legs when she's 8 or whatever.
Like, shut your mouth. Yeah.
And like that's been like brought up, and again, like that the pressure comes onto you pretty early, and I'm like, honestly, are people noticing that?
Overall, my hair is light in different places, but for some reason on my stomach it has always been dark, and that was like my area of sensitivity. And then if you shave it when you're little, because that's all you know about, when it grows back, it's even worse looking, and it's just this non-stop battle. And I can't even think about going through that with my daughter, because
I know, but
I
at
don't want to
least
make her feel self-conscious, but I don't want her to feel self-conscious when she gets made fun of for it not being handled. So it's tricky.
But I think if you're setting up an environment where she can talk to you about it, so then you can discuss like what some of the options are, because otherwise, you're just like 9 and you're like, I guess I'll like get a razor or something, because that's the only thing that you have access to, and like you don't have a lot of information. So I hope that we can at least create an environment where our daughters can talk to us about it, and I like kind of have that conversation, which is not something that I had. And anyway, I would say too, like kind of like talking about dark hair, I had a lot of the stuff where like things changed during pregnancy too. So I did have laser hair removal done before pregnancy, and then it's like after all your hormones change, and so like a lot of stuff grows back anyway. And technically the place that I went to has like a lifetime, you can always like come back and like pay a $100 copay, and then they'll like give you as many sessions as you need to like fix it again. But I still haven't done that, and
maybe I need to go there. I don't know.
I was in no way trying to like add another thing to your list and be like, you should modify this too.
It is funny because to me, like my confidence level is high right now, but I have learned that there are things that I'm sensitive about, and I, for example, will never want my full stomach to show in a bathing suit again, even though I used to wear bikinis before pregnancy. I want to afterwards. I get it. I get that it's one of those things where like the more of us who have stretch marks from pregnancy and all that, the more commonplace they are. But I'm just not ready to be a part of that statement yet. And I feel more comfortable when it's covered.
And that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, like wearing a swimsuit should be something that you feel comfortable in. And so like we can, as much as we want to, sit here and critique our own internal viewpoints that are making you feel that way. But again, like I think a lot of my points here are just like, let's just be, so that we can devote our energy to other things. And so if letting ourselves be means wearing a one-piece swimsuit, if it means like getting the Botox so you can just not be distracted by your 11 lines on a Zoom call, so that we can focus on more important things.
And guys, if you need your leg lengthening surgery and your penis enlarged, and
take a cue from Ron DeSantis and just wear high heels.
Just wear high heels.
Much easier.
The Ron DeSantis high heels, the Elon Musk hair plugs, the Austin Powers penis enlarger.
There are options out there for you too, gentlemen.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we're talking to both sides here, so we'll add that in.
So closing question, Kay, what is one thing that as of yet, never say never, you have thought about doing and have not done?
I just need to get my eyebrows threaded, waxed, something kind of the same as like the 11 started showing up. I feel like eyebrows are one of those things that once you notice you're not upkeeping them, it can start like staring you back in the face, that you're like, just do this little thing. But then, you get it done. You have to get it done every 3 to 4 months or so at least. And that's one thing that, again, like on the list of things that bothers me, I just feel like it doesn't bother me when it should bother me.
As a thick eyebrow haver, I have never looked at your eyebrows and been like, oh man.
It's because mine are light colored, and so now you think that, I now understand your viewpoint that you are a dark colored person, and so you're like, oh, like I have dark eyebrows, Kelly has light ones, and therefore Kelly's eyebrows will always
That's true. I shouldn't tell you that you can't feel uncomfortable about your eyebrows just because you do not have the natural bushiness of my Frida Kahlo eyebrows. But everyone is allowed to
very, very nicely upkept.
Feel uncomfortable in their own way, and we don't need to judge about that. But yeah.
What about you?
So I feel like the one for me is lip filler, because that does seem like such an extreme step to take. It's not something like Botox where you can just be like, oh, like do a little bit. And because it seems like that's one where people can't, and maybe it's just because I don't know who's had it done, and there are people who have had it done that did like just enough to look a little bit fuller and more natural, and I just don't know about those people, and I just see the people with like the Kardashian duck lips on, you know,
how Lindsay
reality
Lohan
TV.
looked the first time, and I'm not. Lindsay Lohan is
Yeah,
wonderful,
she's
and
gone
she
through
looks
some
wonderful
stuff.
again. But when she briefly had them, I was like, oh, but I always loved everything about her face. How like
Yeah, and I guess it's just like one of those things again, kind of back to my original point that I miss the days that I was never alive for. I miss a time before my time when you could just be like, oh, yep, this is a feature of my body, and other than that, you could maybe like, you know, rub a little rouge on your cheeks. There wasn't really much to do about your natural features. And so then you could just get on with living your life instead of, yeah, like being a more thin-lipped person. And I know that that's something that like as you age and you start to kind of lose some of that like elasticity in your face, that you get...
They get thinner.
You get more of that like white lady, like puckered up, little skinny mouth kind of thing. And so I'm like, I don't know, like that could be my future. And then, yeah, but that does feel like a bigger step than like highlighting my hair or, you know, yeah, getting my eyebrows done. To have fillers, and I think it's pretty expensive, so I've never actually done it, but I do like think about that from time to time, or like if you were to ask me that question, I guess that would be my answer. So
when I mentioned to some of our friend group that I was thinking about moving to Miami, not me personally, but my husband would like us to consider moving to Miami. My friend looked at me and she's like, you'd have to get duck lips. Like, we'd come to visit you. You wouldn't be allowed to exist as you. Like, you would come back and you'd be a different person who has way more plastic surgery. And I did not particularly notice that in Miami. It was just a general thing towards any fancier part of the country than the small city that we live in that's known for being a little on the rougher side. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, like I read an article about how with the rise of all this beauty stuff over social media, I mean, on one hand, today's youth have makeup tutorial videos, so they actually look really put together, whereas like, I don't know what you looked like when you were 13, but my makeup was all over the place. I was learning by doing. But I think that there are just more kind of universal beauty standards, and they were talking about kind of everybody like gravitating towards like a certain look, like for a while that like everyone had to look like a Kardashian or everyone wants to look like this, that there's just more of that pressure to conform to a really universal beauty standard. And instead of, when you think like your Timothée Chalamet example of that, there are so many people that their beauty is in their uniqueness. And so you think about, like Lindsay Lohan, she just had a beautiful face and it wasn't exactly like somebody else's face, but that was what made it unique. And so when we have this pressure to all kind of look like this one ideal of beauty, which is usually like built around like a very specific set of racial features, typically white, and other things like that, then it kind of takes away the beauty of just like things that people tell me that they're like, oh, I hate this about myself. Like if you ask that question to other people,
but you
I hate
like
my
you.
freckles. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I hate this. There are always features that as another outside person, you're like, I love that about you. And like, I would love to have that feature because it's like different from what I have. So I feel like that's the summary, is that our like unique quirks are our beauty. And so that's worth thinking about as well. If there's something that you want to change about yourself, that it's like your uniqueness and kind of like your own story too, which is what I've heard about for people who are on team, didn't get Botox and wearing the bikini with their stretch marks, is like those wrinkles and those stretch marks are part of your story. Not that you are erasing your story if you do decide to do something about them, but it's nice to think about what the alternative is if you're kind of struggling with that decision, or the cost of doing it is something that's going to be really disruptive to your life or is outside of your reach. That there's certainly lots of thoughtful reasons why, other than just like some outside control or standard for your body, that you might want to let it be.
Yeah, I love that as a place to end. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. I hope you have a great day.